Hey there. This is the first of many videos of a lecture series in pharmacology. Today what we're going to do is cover some high-yield concepts in pharmacokinetics and something called pharmacodynamics. And these are the basic principles that underlie all of pharmacology. The goal here is for you to understand. I don't need to tell you that pharmacology is a difficult subject, but you know as well as I do that it is a must-know. Together, what we're going to do is go through some of these difficult concepts, break them down into conceptually meaningful chunks that are easy to digest so that you can understand. Now, this video lecture series is meant to supplement two different but related textbooks. The first is Katzung and Trevor's examination and board review book. The second is their basic and clinical pharmacology textbook. Now, the examination and board review book is what it is. It's a review book. It is shorter, it is more concise, it includes review questions with answers. Their basic and clinical pharmacology textbook is a primary textbook. It goes into increased depth for better understanding. And I'd recommend starting with this basic and clinical pharmacology book and then going to the corresponding chapter in the examination and board review book to get all the high-yield concepts and to do the questions with the answers. Now, before we get going, let me introduce myself. My name is Ario Safrazadi. I'm a fourth-year medical student at UC Irvine, and I'm also a master's student in educational multimedia. I love teaching, and this is why I decided to make these videos. So let's jump right into it. So we're going to start with an overview of pharmacokinetics, and we'll be covering Katzung and Trevor's chapters 1 and chapters 3. So if we want to understand pharmacokinetics, we have to be able to differentiate it from pharmacodynamics. So let's do that. Pharmaco, this means drug. Kinetics, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this term, kinetics? Hopefully you're saying motion. And that's what pharmacokinetics is looking at. It's looking at this drug being moved through your body. And in particular, there's one thing that we care about when this drug is moved through your body, and that is the concentration of that drug. And how the concentration of that drug is changing as a function of time as that drug is being moved through your body. So pharmacokinetics is how the drug concentration changes over time as this drug is being moved through your body. And there are 4 phases to this movement. We give that an acronym. A, D, M, E. A is for absorption, D is for distribution, M is for metabolism, E is for elimination. So let's walk through each one of these. And so we have this simplified linear diagram here showing A, D, M, and E. And we're going to go through the process of a drug getting absorbed all the way through getting eliminated from your body. So before we can even consider absorption, we have to think about what route we're going to administer the drug. How are we going to give it to the patient? Are we going to give it directly into their vein, intravenously, which would offer the fastest absorption of the drug? Or maybe we'll give it into the muscle, intramuscularly, IM, and that would offer a little bit slower absorption. Or maybe the most convenient route, that would be PO, by mouth. The way that we administer this drug is going to determine the absorption of the drug. And absorption, in layman's terms, is the process of a drug getting into the systemic circulation. Now, the systemic circulation is important because this is where we start doing our graphs. And in particular, what we care about in the systemic circulation is the concentration of the drug, how it changes. So this C with brackets around it represents concentration. How it changes as a function of time. Pharmacokinetics is looking at this change in drug concentration over time. So if I was to give a drug orally, I might see a graph where the concentration goes up over time, and then that drug gets distributed, metabolized, and eliminated, and it goes down over a certain period of time. And on this graph, we might point out a couple of important points. One might be right here, the top of the graph. That's the maximum concentration of the drug, Cmax. The other point we might recognize is this point right here, the time at which we're at this max concentration. This would be Tmax. And so in the systemic circulation, we're measuring the concentration as a function of time, and we'll see how that concentration will change depending on differences in drug distribution, drug metabolism, drug elimination, and drug absorption that we already mentioned. So now that this drug has gotten into our systemic circulation, it needs to get distributed all throughout the body. And so this distribution takes it to target tissues, But at the same time, that drug is also getting metabolized at the liver. And so what is drug metabolism? Well, in the easiest sense, drug metabolism is starting with drug A, using enzymes, and forming drug B. This is an irreversible process using enzymes that are found in the liver to metabolize drug A into drug B. So what's the difference between drug A and drug B? Or why do we metabolize drugs? Well, we metabolize drugs. Drug B here is more polar. And this is the reason that we metabolize drugs. We make them more polar to get them ready for the final phase of pharmacokinetics, which is elimination. So drugs that are more polar are easier to eliminate at the kidney. And so this is the ADME that you should be familiar with. Now, using this simplified diagram, we can kind of see what might happen if, let's say, I have kidney disease. Patient has chronic kidney disease, let's say they're diabetic. Well, then they might have problems eliminating that drug. Therefore, I might see an increased concentration at the target tissues. But where we actually measure the drug concentration as a function of time is in the systemic circulation. So maybe this graph the tail end of this graph wouldn't be so steep. It might take longer to decrease the concentration as a function of time because I've got problems with elimination. The same thing might be true for a patient who has liver disease. They might have problems metabolizing the drug, and that might affect the concentration as a function of time. So this is pharmacokinetics, my friends. Now let's look at pharmacodynamics. So pharmaco, again, means drug. Dynamics, what does this mean? Well, dynamics comes from this Greek word dynamis, which means power. And so what we're looking at is how this drug is powerful. How does this drug exert its effects? So pharmacodynamics is how the drug exerts its effects on your body. Now, where does this fit into our diagram here? Well, we've got this drug at the target tissues, and this is where it is exerting its effect. So this is pharmacodynamics. Now, we also look at graphs with pharmacodynamics, and many board exams love to use graphs, so we'll be very familiar with graphical interpretation of concepts. And so for pharmacodynamics, the major graph that we look at is we put effect on this y-axis, and instead of time on the x-axis, what we do is we put the concentration of the drug. And so we see over a population at what concentrations do we start to get a desired effect. And we typically get graphs that might look something like this. So at these lower concentrations, I don't have any effect. As the concentration goes up, I start seeing some effect. And then I start to plateau off and get this max effect. And so the terms that we care about with pharmacodynamics are things such as efficacy, or how high of an effect we can get, and also things such as potency. And that is, at what concentrations do we get an effect? And that's most of pharmacodynamics. Now, we'll go into depth of each one of these here in the subsequent videos, but I wanted to give you an overview. Now, before we walk away from this, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. Your book has a very good way of remembering the differences between pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. So for pharmacokinetics, it defines this as what your body is doing to the drug. Your body is absorbing the drug, your body is distributing the drug, your body is metabolizing the drug, your body is eliminating the drug. Whereas pharmacodynamics is not what your body does to the drug, but instead what the drug does to your body. What are the effects of the drug? And in particular here, what we're doing is we're looking at these drug-receptor interactions. So how does that drug bind to the receptor? What are some of those second messengers? What are the effects? And what are the effects on a population-wide scale as a function of the concentration of the drug? Now, one final point. There are two synonyms that you should be familiar with. First is biodisposition. This is just another term for pharmacokinetics. And the reason I say this is you might see an exam question that says, which of the following affects the biodisposition of this drug? And so if you see biodisposition, you should be relating that to pharmacokinetics. The other term here is biotransformation. And this is just another term to relate to the metabolism of the drug. We are transforming drug A into drug B using biological molecules. Biotransformation is metabolism. Alright, so in the next video what we're going to do is look at these different routes of drug administration and see how they might affect drug absorption.